All across the footballing world this season, there have been some huge upsets. Just today in the DFB Pokal, 3rd division side Arminia Bielefeld knocked out the favorites to win it Leverkusen 2-1. But that doesn't even make the top 10 biggest upsets this season. Now you may be wondering, how am I determining this top 10 and what counts as an upset? Well, defining an upset seems pretty easy. It's just an unexpected result. A weaker team beating a stronger team. Espanyol beating Real Madrid 1-0 is definitely an upset, so is Arsenal losing at home to West Ham. But how do I rate them against each other? Well, I discovered this great website called oddsportal.com, which lists the betting odds for every game in pretty much every sport in pretty much every league. It combines a bunch of different betting odds from different websites to make one number, and basically the higher the number, the more unlikely a result is to happen. Let's take today's Premier League games, for example, which haven't happened yet at the time I'm recording this. The biggest number is Leicester beating Man City away from home, which would be a score of 12.55 if it were to happen. A draw would be 7.76, and a City win would be just 1.19. So to find the biggest upsets, what I did was I looked through Europe's top 5 leagues, so the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and Ligue, as well as all these countries' biggest domestic trophies, so the FA Cup, the Copa del Rey, the DFB Pokal, La Coppa Italia, and the Coupe de France. I also included the Champions League, Europa League, and Conference League. The higher the number, the more unexpected the result, so the bigger the upset. Now I'm going to take you through the 10 highest numbers I found, or in other words, the 10 biggest upsets. Oh yeah, and if you were wondering, that Espanyol win was worth 9.45 points, and the West Ham win was worth 11.43. Neither of them make this top 10 though. Before I start the countdown, I want you to try and guess what the number 1 is going to be. Go ahead and write your guess in the comments below. I'll give you a couple clues. First of all, it's not some random teams in the French Cup or Conference League that you haven't heard of. It's in definitely one of the biggest competitions in the world and one of the best teams in the world right now, losing at home to a much worse team. Try rack your brain and give me your prediction. I'll be interested to see if any of you can get it right. Let's kick things off in the Bundesliga with number 10, which was Leverkusen drawing 2-2 at home to Holstein Kiel. The score for this match was 11.66, and it would have been a whopping 26.0 if Kiel had gone on to win it. This was towards the beginning of the season on matchday 6. The reason it was such a surprise was A, Leverkusen were just coming off the back of an unbeaten season in the Bundesliga, and B, Holstein Kiel at this point were dead last of the table. Personally, I was a bit surprised to see a draw make it to the top 10, but I can't deny it was an unexpected result. For number 9, we're going to take a trip over to the Premier League for Liverpool's first appearance on the list. Their 1-0 loss at Anfield to Nottingham Forest had a score of 11.74. Now when we look at this result now, knowing how good Nottingham Forest are this season, the result seems a little bit less surprising, but at the time it was absolutely shocking. This was only on match day 4 of the Premier League, and Nottingham Forest had just narrowly escaped relegation the season before. Also, Anfield is an absolute fortress most of the time. Someone like Man City or Arsenal would be lucky to get a win there, let alone Nottingham Forest. I remember this result, and it kind of cemented Nottingham Forest's good start to the season as a bit more than just luck. At number 8, we have our first French teams. In Ligue 1, it's Le Havre's 2-1 away win over Lille. This earned a score of 12.19. Lille, of course, is one of the best teams in France outside of PSG this season, and Le Havre, before this match took place, were rock bottom on the table. Definitely an upset. Also, one thing I've noticed about these numbers is that when a team wins away from home, that weighs a lot into increasing the number. Also, another quick aside here, it's more focused on the win rather than the score. For example, while doing my research, I found that Bournemouth's 5-0 win over Nottingham Forest was only given a score of 1.95. A result where a Bournemouth win wasn't all that surprising, but the way that they won was surprising. So the amount of goals a team scores doesn't really matter here. Alright, for number 7, we have the magic of the FA Cup, and the result that personally came to my mind when I was picking my biggest upset of the season, Plymouth rock bottom of the championship, knocking out Liverpool top of the Premier League from the FA Cup in round 4. This is why I love cup competitions like the FA Cup. Having all the divisions in England being able to play each other is absolutely magical. And for number 6, we're going to stay in the FA Cup, but on a much lower end. We have Gateshead losing 3-1 to Hednesford with a score of 13.61. I don't blame you if you've never heard of any of these teams, I never have either, but Gateshead are currently 7th place in the National League, which is the 5th tier in England, and Hednesford right now are 3rd place in the 8th tier of England, the northern west of non-league Division 1. currently losing out to a car company. Now, it's a huge jump from the semi-professional non-league to the National League, so that is an absolutely massive upset, and congrats to Hednesford. If there's anyone from Hednesford watching right now, let me know. At number 5, we're staying in the lower tiers but moving over to France for a Coupe de France upset. Now, you could argue that this one might deserve to be number 1, I'll explain shortly. So this match was a win by 5th tier French side Saint-Philbert over Ligue 2 side Pau FC. By the way, the 5th tier in France is much worse than the 5th tier in England. Every team in the 5th tier in France is either amateur or semi-pro, so to defeat a solid Ligue 2 side is amazing. However, since Saint-Philbert only won on penalties, the match was considered a draw and given a score of 13.67. If they had won in regular time, the score would have been a whopping 43.50, by far the highest on the whole list. But I do understand why penalties is seen as different from a regular win, so I'm going to stick with the 13.67 and keep them at number 5. Alright, now we're back to the top tier with a huge Bundesliga upset at number 4. We have VfL Bochum beating Bayern away 3-2 with a score of 14.14. Now, I don't know if this was taken into account with the score, but what puts this one as one of the best upsets for me is that Bayern actually went 2-0 up in this game. Either way, this is definitely deserving to be in the top 5 because Bochum were just a couple points off the bottom of the table before this match was played, and then to come back and win against Bayern at their own ground is an amazing feat. Into the top 3, we now have Barcelona losing 2-1 to Las Palmas at home with a score of 16.86. This one is so huge because Barcelona were absolutely storming ahead of the pack at the beginning of the season, flying so high, and then this loss was in the midst of a bit of a terrible run for them. They also lost to Real Sociedad and drew to Celta Vigo, but this was much worse than that, losing at home to a team that was 17th place before the match. To make matters worse, this loss actually led to Real Madrid leapfrogging them in the table, not that that lasted super long anyway. Alright, our runner-up is going to amaze you. One of the most exciting and biggest games that I'm sure all of you turned into, Larne versus Gent. 1-0 with a score of 17.45. Yeah, I didn't know this game happened at all, and I honestly had never heard of Larne before this. Sorry, guys. But this match took place in the Europa Conference League on match day 6. Larne are currently 3rd place in the Northern Irish League, and for those who don't know, Gent are one of the top sides in the Belgian League. Larne before this season had never qualified for any kind of European competition, but this season they beat Gibraltar's Lincoln Red Imps to make it to the Conference League, where they lost every single game, but then redeemed themselves on the final day with a historic 1-0 win against a solid Gent side that would have made the top 8 if they beat Larne. But they didn't. Larne, however, still finished 34th, but it would have been dead last without that win, and at least they got their first ever victory in a European competition. I know I downplayed this match earlier, that was just a little joke. I honestly think this is an amazing story, an amazing victory for Larne. If anyone from Larne is watching, please let me know. Alright, now for the big one, the biggest upset of the season so far. Let me know if any of you guessed this one right. It involves another team that's already been on the list. It's part of a streak I already mentioned. It's Barcelona losing at home again. This time their 1-0 loss to Leganes, which was given a score of a whopping 19.92. Now, why this was rated significantly higher than Las Palmas, I don't know, because Leganes were also 17th, and Barca were actually 2nd place going into the match instead of 1st. But this loss actually pushed Barcelona all the way down to 3rd place, 5 points behind Real Madrid. And I remember thinking it wasn't looking too hot for Barcelona at this point. It's safe to say they've turned that around, but yeah, this is definitely an unquestionable upset. And I think part of what contributes to the high score is that Leganes were able to hold the best attacking side in the world to a clean sheet away from home. So congratulations to Leganes, you successfully completed the biggest upset of the season so far. What do you think? Did that deserve to be number 1? Are there some big upsets from other leagues I forgot to cover? Are there any bigger upsets that you can think of that just didn't get a high enough score in the system? Let me know in the comments below and subscribe to Footballers for more videos like this one.